Luca. Bueno. Piñu. Bueno. Piñu. Bueno.
Stop acting like something's wrong. We're not flawless. We're a work in progress. We got dents and we got quirks, but it's our flaws that make us work. Yeah, we're not flawless. We're a work in progress. So tell me what flaws you got too, 'cause I still like what's flawed about you.
Okay, so y'all notice how it says literally almost any other show in that TikTok I made? Well, because if I'm being honest, Primos really isn't like the worst thing out there. We got Miraculous Ladybug for that title. I'm saying this even though I'm going to watch the movie that's coming out on Netflix. So stay tuned for that review. But for now, we're going to be talking about Primos, which is a show that's been spiking in controversy ever since the first look. So, yeah. Primos isn't really good, and if you don't know what Primos is, it's basically a show about this little girl who's going to go on her summer break, and she has plans, except her cousins come over and then ruin said plans, and now she has to handle her life in a big family. Which, the concept itself is pretty okay, even though it's kind of generic, admittedly, because we already have two shows like that, you know, The Loud House and Casa Grandes, which, by the way, speaking of Casa Grandes, people like to compare this show to Casa Grande, so we're going to be talking about that as well, just because, I don't know, I think it's a fair comparison, in my opinion. But in general, we're going to be talking about Primos, how bad it is, and, like, you know, it's just not a good show, and I'm probably not going to see it, even though I might be curious in the end. So, yeah, let's talk about it. And I just want to say before we do, that even though I am Mexican myself, and I of course have my own opinions about this show, feel free to talk about, like, you know, your own perspective about this show. This is just, like, what I think personally, because I know for sure I, of course, do not represent all of Mexico, or, like, hey, Latino America in general. So, if you have any other thoughts, go ahead and put them in the comments. I will gladly read them. So anyways, let's get started. So far, the most common critique thing about this show is literally in the opening title and a lyric within the theme song. So the main title is Oye Primos, which, you know, in the theme song it also says Oye Primos a bunch of times. And the thing that people notice is that this sentence or phrase is grammatically incorrect, because oye is actually supposed to be used in a singular sense. Like, for example, like if you say oye primo, that would be grammatically correct, but the correct word to use when you're talking about multiple primos or cousins, just in case you guys don't know what primos is, it means cousins, the correct phrase would be oigan primos. So yeah, she didn't do that, the creator didn't do that, so yeah, it's a little bit weird that, like, you know, the title has like a grammatical error, which I don't know if that was like, at the time I didn't know if it was a purposeful choice. And, like, people are saying, oh my gosh, like, you know, oye primos, it's like not grammatically correct, which of course it's triggering, of course, and people are just like, you're not using that, you know, you're not using the grammar in Spanish correctly, which I get that, but, like, I don't know. I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt. Maybe Oye Primos just somehow sounds a little more catchy than Oigan Primos, which hey, I don't know if, like, if she was thinking that, because in my opinion it doesn't really matter. I feel like Oigan Primos would have been better. But hey, maybe it just sounds better in her head and it just rolls off the tongue more. But no, that's not the reason why, and in fact, the reason why is even worse. It's like her response to the whole thing was basically as if, like, you know, like, it's as if she was trying to give herself an excuse, and we're gonna be watching that whole video right now as to, like, you know, her excuse as to why, you know, it doesn't matter if there was a grammatical error.
The Spanish language is not a Latin American language. It's a language the Spanish conquistadors forced upon Latin American people. The only reason we're Latin people and not Native American people is because of that distinction. So be mad at me all you want for misspelling words in Spanish. Be mad at me all you want for mispronouncing words in Spanish. That doesn't take away from the fact that I am a Mexican American, Native American woman. We're trying to make a good show for kids that feel left out, for kids that are different, for kids who don't have a full grasp on any language, no matter where they live. And if you're going to be mad at that, I don't know. Be mad then.
Okay, for sure, that was long. But I think it's important to like see that whole clip so then you guys can fully understand like how bizarre her excuse is. And I'm gonna explain like why her excuse is just, bullcrap. So, is she correct about the whole like, Spanish is actually just a language brought over by colonizers? Yes. But she also fails to understand that English itself is also a language brought over by colonizers. And yet she's saying this excuse all in English. So I just find it massively hypocritical, and it feels like definitely an excuse that to like justify her mispronunciation of certain words, or like misspelling of certain words within the show. And I just find it just bizarre and crazy. And while of course she isn't technically wrong, her reasoning is just like it's just not a good reason to like explain her excuse at all. Because like I said, English is also technically a language brought over by colonizers, yet we use that language still and like try to use it to communicate with each other, especially because in the country I live in America, which is kind of like mostly English over here, we're not going to like mispronounce or like misspell any words on purpose just because we know it's a language brought over by colonizers. That's just there's no point in doing that. And besides, she also fails to understand that while Spanish is kind of technically like a language brought over by colonizers, it's still like a huge part in Latin culture, and especially since this show is targeted at Mexican American children, or I guess like Latino American children in general, but mostly Mexican, just because she's Mexican herself, and I believe the show is just like a Mexican American family anyways. But it's at least the target audience is the Spanish speaking audience, or at least living in a Spanish speaking household. So it's just kind of weird that she would like ignore that whole part of the Mexican culture. And by the way, I'm just gonna put my own sense into this just because I feel like it's important to like put in my own thing. So when I was younger, I had a fair share of Mexican representation, and what I mean by that is that the only shows that I had kind of represented like the whole Mexican experience was like Dora the Explorer and Handy Manny, which by the way, I recently found out Dora the Explorer isn't even Mexican. She's pan-Latina, but like, hey, as a kid I saw her as Mexican, so I guess she still spoke Spanish, so like I had my representation there. But like, if I were to see this show Primos, then I'd probably be very confused for the whole Spanish stuff, because shows like Dora the Explorer, Handy Manny, they teach you Spanish, but like the most basic words in Spanish, like universal things, like pretty sure like almost anybody in the world would probably know, like hola and adios. So imagine my no sabo kid self trying to watch Primos, and then they say oye Primos within the opening seconds of the show, and then I use that in my everyday vocabulary when I use that Spanish. It's just not going to work. So if you're going to put Spanish within a show, maybe use it correctly so then children can follow along. And you said that this is for Mexican American children, so of course we need to learn our Spanish. You can't just mix it up just because it's like kind of Spanish is like it's a colonizer language. We're not even supposed to use it right to begin with. Well, that's just a language that most of us use. So whether we like it or not, it's still part of us. And of course we can recognize that that Spanish was like brought over by other people, but at the same time she's acting like other countries don't like recognize this at all. And in fact, I took an AP Spanish class, and I did learn a few things from there. And what I did learn is that there are plenty of Latino countries that actually do like teach kids at school like other native languages within the Latin culture. So it's not like all of us don't know that, but like hey, I know it's like a thing that I guess that needs to be talked about more, and of course I am fully aware of that. But she's targeting Mexican American children in the most used language in that culture is Spanish. So maybe teach it right, especially for Nausabo kids like me. And another thing that people keep pointing out about like a misuse of the Spanish language is apparently in the leaked pilot, which I saw over on TikTok. For some reason I can't find it on YouTube. I just saw on TikTok where the main character is just writing in her journal, and then within the opening page of her journal she says, "Welcome, bienvenidos." Welcome, bienvenidos. Bienvenidos means welcome. You just said welcome twice. It's basically the same as saying welcome, welcome.
It's the same as saying chai tea. Oh, I love chai tea. No!
Okay, so that's probably like a translation thing where like with many Latin shows they just say like the Spanish word first and then the English word right afterwards, so then the kids in the audience can learn their Spanish. In general, what I'm saying is that like when you make your show that's about Spanish, you know, do it right. I mean, look at these other stuff that have Spanish in them. Encanto has Spanish, yet people are not like, well, they shouldn't be speaking Spanish correctly because, you know, it's a colonizer language. Coco is a Spanish-speaking movie. And heck, it even takes place in Mexico. But nobody's ever saying, you know, hey, we shouldn't be speaking Spanish correctly because it's a colonizer language. There are plenty of instances of many shows and movies that have Spanish in them, yet nobody's ever given them backlash of how it's a colonizer language. This is literally the only show where like the creator or like one of the people behind the show actively says, well, it's okay if my Spanish is incorrect because it's a colonizer language. Like, see, this is definitely an excuse to just get like out of her like ignorance and like her laziness to like actually like teach proper Spanish within her own show targeted at Mexican American children, which actually speak the Spanish language. So it just sounds like an excuse. Like when you really think about it, her excuse just gets more bizarre, and it's just super dumb. Okay, and there are other stereotypes within this show that like people just don't sit right with. For example, Terremoto Heights, which is like the name of the place that this show takes place in. First of all, of course, it's a made-up setting, but like the fact that it's called Terremoto Heights, which, by the way, terremoto, when you translate it, it translates to earthquake, so it's Earthquake Heights. But the thing that's like kind of messed up about this is that like, you know, it's kind of insensitive since Mexico itself kind of has like a really long history of like really terrible earthquakes. And also some other stereotypes that people have noticed is that like when you see the opening title, there's like a cleaner right out of there. Now nobody knows if that's like her dad, and like maybe this is just like a like since it's a Mexican American household, maybe like one of the parents is just white. But at the same time, you know, cleaning, not a very good stereotype to put on Mexican shows. And it's just, you know, just kind of like, it's just kind of careless of her to just like not really think about like, you know, what to put in. And also probably the second biggest infamous thing within the show is like the characters' names. I'm not going to say the character's name just because, you know, it's not a good word. But this character's name right here, depending on like what region you live in or like you come from, this could mean something like pretty not safe for work at all. So yeah, that's kind of a yikes moment, and it just proves that yeah, she just doesn't care with what she's saying with her Spanish within this show. So yeah, it's just not good. It's not good. So we're done with like the whole stereotypes and like the mispronunciation or like misspelling of the words in the show, but I want to like quickly talk about like, you know, how similar this is to Casa Grande's. I say similar just because like the concept is kind of similar, where like they're both like, you know, in big Mexican families, which okay, admittedly, you know, the whole like thing where like Mexican people have like big families can be like stereotyped in a way, but like I guess it doesn't really have to come out as bad at all. I mean, like, I know I have a big family, but like, I guess like, you know, for the past 18 years of my life, it's only been me, my brother, and my two parents So I guess it's like more of like a standard household or whatever you'd call that, just within like 4 people, I guess is what most people will call a standard household. I don't know, just like a household that's like not a lot of people. But I of course know how big my family is. It's just we're kind of all over the place. But you know, like I said, for the past like 18 years it's just only been me, my brother, and my parents. So like, you know, it's like, you know, I guess I don't really like relate too much with the whole like, you know, big family thing, because I've never really lived with like a whole entire like big family with like all these cousins and like aunts and uncles within the same house. But you know, I can see with like, you know, Primos and Casa Grandes, because of course have the family experience, and I can still like see like, you know, what's like relatable and what's not, and I can still pinpoint at this and see like, you know, that Primos and Casa Grandes, like, you know, what is good, what is bad, and like I said, the whole thing about like having a big Mexican family like isn't inherently a bad thing as long as you don't stereotype. And it's like many like Latino like based movies and shows do that. I brought up Coco and Encanto earlier because yeah, both movies kind of like are like centered around like a big family, especially Encanto, because that whole movie is basically about like, you know, how big Mirabel's family is, and like, you know, how like she has all these cousins and aunts and uncles and all that stuff, like, you know, and like, you know, that's not inherently bad. And like, you know, Coco has like its own thing, but like that's actually like a Mexican household, because like, you know, Encanto's like from Colombia, I think. So yeah, and it's just like I said, it doesn't have to be a bad thing. And I see with the Casa Grandes, because I feel like I don't think Casa Grandes is like very problematic with how it represents Mexican people, like, or at least I haven't heard any complaints from other people. I guess the only complaint I heard is that the show itself is bad, which I kind of disagree with. I always thought Casa Grandes was just fun, and if I'm being honest, I feel like Casa Grandes is a little bit better than Loud House, just because like I remember like I would like put the show on sometimes, and then me and my brother would just like pinpoint like certain stuff that the characters do, and then we'd be like, hey, we kind of do that at our house. So like, you know, it's just I guess it's just, you know, just kind of like a good fresh air, because like Loud House, yeah, it was okay, but I guess like, you know, since it's a big family, it's like not in like since we're not the same culture, of course, I guess I didn't relate too much with the characters. I guess I had more fun with Casa Grandes because like I can actually kind of relate a little bit more. But like, yeah, I just think Casa Grandes is like a little more fun. But Primos, like, yeah, it's like in the same concept, but like I said, there's like stereotyping stuff. Maybe not necessarily about a Mexican household, like a big Mexican household, but like, you know, it's just other stuff that kind of ruins the experience. So yeah, Primos bad, Casa Grandes good. So here's some general thoughts about the show before I kind of like close off. So the show just doesn't really appeal to me. Like I said, there's like plenty of shows where like the whole concept of like, you know, having a big family, what it's like to live in a big family, has already been done and over with. Like I said, Loud House and the Casa Grandes, you know, they've already had like their own like run, and like, while both shows were kind of fun, I guess like, you know, it's been a little bit overdone at this point. And now since Primos has come into the mix, I don't know, I guess the concept just doesn't really work for me. And it's just, you know, like I guess like putting the whole like Mexican stereotypes aside, like, you know, the show itself just kind of seems bland, I guess. And by the way, speaking of blandness, I really don't like the animation. I don't know what's wrong with it. It's just the character design looks extremely weird, and especially with the main character, like I don't really like how she looks. I feel like she's really hard trying to like emulate Mabel's personality from Gravity Falls. Like, I don't know why, she just screams Mabel, but like failing hard at it. It's like Mabel and Star like put together, and then like boom, this is what you get for this character. So yeah, I just find it, you know, like I just find the character designs kind of weird, I guess. Maybe this is just a personal thing. The animation in general is just not the most appealing, and I don't really like it. So I guess in general the show is just not really for me. And it's fine if like, you know, if like you guys like are going to check it out, but like I probably won't. But like I said, probably curiosity will probably like win me over, and I'll probably like end up like, you know, taking like a look at the show, maybe like a brief look at the show, then I'll probably like log off, but like, yeah, no, this is not it for me. But like, I don't know, Primos itself, like ignoring the whole like controversy about Mexican stereotypes and like how bad it represents a Mexican family, putting that aside, like the whole show just doesn't seem good. It just seems bland for me. So I don't know, this show just, it's just, I'm probably not gonna check it out. Probably will, probably not, I don't know, it's still left in the air. So yeah, that's just like my general thoughts about the show. So yeah, those are my thoughts about Primos. In terms of like how it represents the Mexican culture, not good, and in terms of being like an actual show itself, also not good. But Primos just isn't, it's just not for me, I guess. So anyways, comment down below and tell me what you guys think about Primos. Are you gonna check it out? Are you not gonna check it out? If you're Mexican yourself or Latino, just tell me like, you know, your whole side of like, you know, how you view this show. Like, I would really love to hear it, for real. And but if like, regardless if you're Mexican or not, you know, tell me what you think about the show, as long as you keep respectful. I would love to hear what you guys think about this show. You know, because I guess it's interesting in some sort of aspect. So anyways, this is the Winged Unicorn, and I'm about to fly away. See you guys in the next video. Bye!